Testing. Wonder how the sound is. Just going to talk to myself. Just my head shaking. Oh, someone's watching a sound check. Oh, and they left. All right. Testing sound. It's so fun. I'll be loud enough. Crack the back. Always stretch. Couple minutes till start. Starting early this week. See behind the scenes. Week 1. All right. Seconds too. One day we'll look back at this and laugh. All right, 4 o'clock, so we'll start. So welcome to Webwide Church. I'm Kevin, and today, first week 1, idea I've had for a long time, and Corona is kind of the time to kick me in the butt and say you have no excuses now. So thanks for watching. We'll start off with prayer and then get to it. Dear Heavenly Father, we do thank you for this day. Thank you that you do keep us safe, dear God. We do pray for everyone afflicted with this disease, that you would give them comfort and rest, dear God. You give wisdom in how to best handle this. You'd give intelligence to the people who need to go out, how best to avoid contaminating, being contagious. And we just pray for safety for everyone who do work in jobs we rely on. disease or not, pandemic or not. Thank you for this time. Thank you for allowing us to meet like this. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so we're going to be talking about the verse. I have it down below, 2 Timothy 1:7, verses. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and sound reasoning. So this is a verse that's being kicked around a lot, especially when it comes to whether or not churches should remain open or they should close their doors during this time. I will be upfront and honest. I think that as much as able to, churches should function as normal. People, society as a whole, I believe we should try to function as normal. If you are not around vulnerable people, if you are not, you know, um, part in that risk zone, your likelihood of catching it and then being seriously effective are pretty low. So yeah, that's my thought. So I'll put that out there. That doesn't mean I'm going to say, well, this verse shows it to us. I want to kind of weigh both sides of this argument, and then really go on into the topic. If you read all the things down there, going to generosity in this time and what does that look like, what that could mean. So God has not given us the spirit of fear, and that is, kind of very basic and upfront, but it is powerful. It is something to consider. Why are we making decisions to close churches, to cancel functions? Are we doing it out of this is the way we should do it in this situation? Are we just doing it, well, I don't want to get sick? Bible makes it clear that we shouldn't worry about getting sick. There are verses in the Great Commission where Jesus says, just go out and preach, and you will do miraculous things, and things that would normally harm you will not be able to harm you. You'll drink poison and will not die, and you'll shake off snakes, and you'll be fine. We actually see this happen with Acts on his way to Rome when he's shipwrecked, and they're moving wood. He gets bit by a poison snake, and the locals were like, this man is so evil that even surviving the shipwreck, fate has come in and bit him, and then he shakes the snake off into the fire, and he was completely fine. And then he had a different problem where now they thought he was a god, but it gave him a chance to speak into that. So we have, the Jesus saying it will happen, and we have an example of what that looks like. Now that doesn't mean we go and handle venomous snakes in church, like certain churches do. That is more cultish behavior than a faith thing. We don't test God in these ways, but these are ways that when we do God's plan and God's will, we can have faith in our safety and in our security, in our health, and honestly, we should take the attitude of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, where our God will save us, and if not, who cares? We got to be with Him, and all's well in the world. So this idea that we don't need to live in fear. We can just go about our day and be fine. It should definitely be considered. It should be something that we should make sure of. And that this isn't why we're doing things, and we have the insurances for going forward should we be living our life like that. Excuse me, I do not have a runny nose because of sickness. I have a runny nose because I have always had a runny nose. So now let's take a look at the rest of the verse. And it's kind of funny that this verse that is saying, keep the church door open, don't live in fear, it ends with sound reasoning. Depending on your translation, some other translations say self-control, sound judgment, and all these things. But it's there, and it kind of goes along with, we don't make our decisions out of fear, but out of judgment, out of logical thinking it through. So let's think this through. Should churches be closed? Well, there are a lot of reasons why churches should be closed. For one, we're called to respect the authority of our government. And right now in Manitoba, it says, please don't have gatherings of 50 or more people. So fair enough. That doesn't go outside the realms of God's law. So it is a rule that we should respect. There are places where that's 10 people. There's places where it's 100 people. Depends on the severity and just the ability of the area to do such a thing. So there should be your first guideline. If you are a church over 50 people gathering at once in Manitoba, then you need to look at something else to fall under the authority of our earthly laws, as we're told to, as Jesus tells us to. Secondly, um, are you around? Are you vulnerable? Do you have a compromised immune system? Are you elderly? Do you have young in the home that get kind of sickly easy? Are you around those kind of people? Do you interact with those people? Even during this time of self isolation, will you interact with them? And again, don't even if your church stays open, you should probably stay away. Um, we see this in Corinthians. I can't remember First or Second Corinthians. Um, Man, I try to have relevant verses, and then now I'm pulling out different verses. But um, you can Google search. You're watching online. You can open up another bar. You don't have to watch my face. But where Paul tells the elders to mix wine with their water. They're having stomach ailments, but they're trying to live a pure just a basic life. And he's like, this is foolishness. Take common medical practice and apply it to yourselves. You are advanced in age. Don't risk it. Um, so there we go. We have another example of why we do something that is worldly smart, worldly intelligent to protect our health. We take care of our health. That's something we should do. We should treat our body well. We're actually supposed to beat our body into submission. So taking care of it, being healthy, being active to make sure our body can do everything we want it to do. Um, and if you're elderly, going out and getting sick is not a good thing, or bringing the sickness around other people is not very good as well. If your church is open, or you're in a group and you really want to go, but you are around these people, then let's use that sound reasoning. Go, and then know that before you come back to your house, you need a time of showering, new clothes. Before you go, pack a bag, and double plastic bags, throw it in, and then find a place to shower before you go home and interact. Um, Something like that is possible. This is a lot of people who work at hospitals do this all the time because they are exposed to lots of germs year round. That's why they have showers and changing rooms at hospitals. I know this when I go visit my friend in the States when he worked at a hospital. Me or one of my kids, usually my son, my daughter, one of us always got sick because we are fairly isolated up here. He was not. Even if we have the same lifestyles, just traveling 300 miles, there are different germs. This is a thing that we can see year round, and there are ways to deal with it. So think to yourself, where can I go? Um, you can shower at your friend's house, maybe, and then of course then quickly get to your car. There's no point in showering, then lingering around and doing things. Or you're like, well, maybe I don't need a shower, but as soon as I get home, I go straight to a bathroom that these people don't use, and I wash my hands. Sanitizer, I'll hand sanitizer at their place. There are ways. There are ways to do it. So again, looking at what Paul says in Corinthians to the elders of, let's be smart about this. There are ways of using sound judgment to carry on a day activity to go out and mingle with the group. And so there are ways, but again, using sound judgment, it should be primary. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work, staying home. As church leadership, maybe they have to look at their congregation. There are people, as they advance in age, their thought processes aren't always as coherent and as sound. So maybe the church leadership have to take it on themselves. We have a large elderly population, and there will be several of them who will come if church is still going. Because although we tell them not to come, their thought process is, oh no, I'm going to come. That shouldn't apply to me. I've been going to this church for decades. This God will protect me. This, there are so many things. And so even though there are ways, even a smaller church can look at it and say, do you know what? We're a church of 40 people. We're under that 50. Half of the body is, 20 people, though, are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, or higher, and they're, maybe you want to call them stubborn, maybe you just want to call them, a decision compromise. We see this again in other walks of life. When someone gets to a certain age, to a certain mindset, A lot of times their children or maybe even their grandchildren or someone else in the family have legal powers for them where they can't sign contracts, they can't sign up for things anymore because decision making is compromised. This is why scams often target the elderly. Um, so, if as a church leader, they have to take that into consideration. They have to take into consideration how many people are going to come. Maybe it's just like, well, we can have enough people coming, but our congregation is kind of one where we'll probably only have 6 people show up. And then do we need to, when it's like, well, then if you only have 6 people show up, why don't you show up? But, then just plan around, well, what can we do instead? And that's going to be kind of the idea to put out there is there are a lot of churches that said we're not going to attend, come to the sanctuary, but we're going to do things instead. And there's a real drive to small groups where you have 5 to 10 people, life groups, cell groups, whatever you call them in your church, Bible study groups. But these groups are amazing in church and kind of one of the main reasons why people should get to physical church. One of the goals of Webwide Church to get people into a physical church is to get into such a group. And then we'll release our sermon and then encourage the discussion in those small groups on how to talk and apply the sermon. And maybe we'll focus on that. And this will be a time of tool and growing. And then they could say, now we can make it a time of discipleship. We'll encourage the leaders in that group to really focus and help the newer people in their faith really grow during this time. It is kind of sad. I've seen some churches outright canceling their small groups as well. That I don't think would be something that's very diligent in this time. I think more so now than ever, people should make a purpose to be together as much as possible to encourage each other through this time. And I mean, Webwide Church is the idea that we reach people online, but again, with that goal of bringing people together. So when you are together, like, let's not separate because of something, of being concerned. Again, we'll take all the risk factors and, judge them, weigh them. And, maybe a couple might not be able to come to the small group. Again, they have someone in their house is compromised immune system, things like that. But it should be something to really, really, really consider saying we're going to stay together and we're going to be strong in this. So that is kind of the idea is there is good validity to both arguments. Don't have fear and live your life, but also take the precautions, use sound judgment as much as able to. Live your normal life, go to church normally, or adapt. Improvise, adapt, overcome. Adapt to it. Don't cancel it. Adapt it. Now, during this time, there are many other things that I think Christians need to watch and be concerned about. Anyone who knows me personally knows that I'm big into, okay, what's really going on here? Tinfoil hat, government conspiracies. I'm not a huge conspiracy theorist, but I do think that the government's always trying to work something to their advantage. And you can see that here. And just the one joke I had was before it got really serious. When there was almost no cases in central Canada, one case in Manitoba, and none in Saskatchewan, none in northwestern Ontario. A ton of churches around were shutting their doors. And my comment was, "Man, Satan's sitting there like, wow, I couldn't even do that. I couldn't get them to shut their doors that fast." There's a lot of talk online and a lot of kind of unnerving behavior among Christians because we're warned in Revelation about the end times and what's going to happen and the persecution and the inability to openly worship in those end times, and how all it takes is there's a pandemic and a few trigger phrases and all of a sudden people are like, oh yes, we got to shut it down. So be careful when falling into that. If you find yourself using a kind of a sensationalized trigger phrase from media over and over again, just stop yourself and say, okay, I know what this means, but am I doing it because I use sound judgment and thought it through, or am I doing it because the media has said it, people have said it, Facebook has said it, social media has said it so much that it's become part of me? And then ask yourself, okay, I've thought it through, but how easily did I fall into that? because there will come a time where there will be something like this in the world, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's war, civil war, strife, disease. Revelation talks about a lot where it's during this time where Christianity is going to be more or less banned as an open expression of faith. And just how quickly it can go, because we're like, oh, it's needed, and oh, by the way, then we're also going to include Christianity, and you get so into the whole this is needed without thinking. So there is some concern I've seen, just seeing people just so quickly hop in and behind these, again, not the idea as a whole, but these kind of key things. It's kind of like, processed foods. When you're talking about a healthy diet, people are like, oh, processed foods are bad, but you ask them what a processed food is, and they're like, food that's highly processed, and they can't tell you. They can't go to the store and show you what a healthy diet is, because by avoiding processed foods, because they don't actually know what that means, and they don't realize that actually most of the healthy foods have been processed to an extent. It's mostly a media trigger word. Don't hate me if you're a nutritionist, but so again, be cautious in how you interact with people. Try to interact with people. Be cautious on how you're being misled. I have the verses below talking about the end times, of course, the entire book of Revelations. I put that link there because as I was trying to kind of refresh me some other ones, I'm like, why type out all the references? Just go here. Matthew 24, Luke 21, scattering of other verses. But it talks about all the common theme in them, in the Old Testament, in Revelations, talks about falsehoods and deceptions in the end times, and not even the very end, like Revelations, but leading up to it. From the days, even back then, they had false prophets they're dealing with. 10 years after Jesus ascended, 5 years after Jesus ascended. You might say, well, this is a health thing, not a false prophet thing, but how easy that can turn, how quickly we closed down our churches here in Manitoba before it was necessarily, when the number was 250, churches of 100 were shutting down. Why? So we have to be on guard for that. We have to make sure we're making these decisions out of wise, deductive reasoning, and not because boom, it's just the way it is, and we have become so used to that sensationalized. Anyway, very sensational word, sensational. There we go. So be careful on that. That's just something else to be in there. Again, it's not even that these trigger phrases are necessarily bad, but it's just how quickly you kind of jump into them without fully understanding why. But lastly, our last kind of point is, during this time, make sure you don't use it as an excuse to shut yourself off. Socialization, we're supposed to shut ourselves off. No, our Christian calling is to be a light into the world, especially in these dark times. Especially during these dark times, we need to be reaching out. I say, well, I can't, all this stuff, and I get that, but ask yourself this: how you can do it. Pray in your prayers. Ask God, how can I reach out during this time? You know what? 6 feet, hand sanitizer, whatever it takes. You can still minister to people. You can still be the light to people. If you're walking down the road, you're going for a walk, you see someone, you're probably going to cross streets, that kind of awkward thing. But just ask yourself, before you go out, God, how can I minister to people? God, what can I see? I'm reading my Facebook feed. Depression and mental health issues are going to come to the forefront. There are going to be people crying out in different ways. Dear God, can I please see that in these posts? Which ones are, attention seekers? There's a lot of them going on there too. I live my life online. I get that. But which ones are people who are just, they need something, whether it could just be a simple word, an encouragement, a text. One thing going around is go through your contact list, and during this time, text everyone. Whether all of them at once, a mass, don't do a group text, because that's so annoying, because you always get that one person who texts and doesn't realize he's sending it to everyone. So one at a time, copy and paste, send, or pick one day. I'm going to purpose to talk to this person. Next day, this person, that person. If you're like me, you probably won't get through your contact list before the self-isolation time ends. Some people you might have to do 2 or 3 in a day. Um, but reach out. Find ways to reach out. My neighbor said I saw him complained about the overreaction of people. I was like, I'm more scared of that than the virus for me and my family, me and my 2 kids. And he's like, yeah. And it's like, but hey, if you need anything, just let me know. I didn't, I bought one of everything. So it's not like I have tons, but I have enough for a couple weeks, and in a couple weeks we'll be back to normal as far as the store shelves go on. But yeah, can't do something like that. Someone say, hey, if you need to go out, an elderly couple, say, hey, if you need anything, let me know. I will go out for you. I will go out, I'll get it, I'll leave it on your doorstep, I'll back away 6 feet, all that, so you don't have to go and expose yourself. This is actually something people who have come back from traveling, they're not supposed to be going out and shopping. They need to find people to shop for them. If you know someone who's recently come back from vacation, either because of this or right before this, call them and say, hey, do you have everything? I know you're supposed to be self-isolating. Did you get everything before? Call them, ask them. And again, people, if you do go out, I know there's going to be at least one person if you're going out shopping that needs the love of Christ, and that will be your retail store worker that checks you out. They need it now more than ever. Trust me on that. Just say, hey, how are you holding up? Like, are you doing okay? And make sure you're not like in a, oh, are you sick? Like, do I have to this? But in a actual, I'm concerned about your well-being through this. A couple words could just change this whole 6 week time of just stress on them. Some of them are concerned. I'm around these people all day, and I need to work because I need the money and people need this and all this stuff, but I'm scared of getting sick, passing it on. And so sometimes just being that blessing could just really turn their mood, and they'll go from I'm worried to, it's unfortunate, but I think I'm okay. And crazy thing is about our bodies is that when you live in worry, you're actually more susceptible to get sick. So maybe that kind of word will actually help prevent them. Like that's crazy. That's science. A happier mood actually is a healthier mood. You could do a quick prayer over them. You don't have to like stop and say, I'm going to lay my hands to pray on you. Just do it if you're waiting in line, 6 feet back from the person in front of you, pray over them both. As you're walking away, pray over them. And you see someone there, there's always going to be the opportunities. I remember one time bringing my children back from Kenora after a visit from their moms. Something on the radio just got them saying, oh man, I wish we could give to needy people. I was like, yeah, in Winnipeg there's opportunities, but we don't go into the city that often. But yeah, it's kind of cool when you are able to. Well, we pulled up on so that was about half an hour into a trip. It's a 2-hour trip back, about half an hour from home. So we've been driving an hour and a half. We pull up at an A&W, or sorry, an hour and a half after they said that. We've been driving for half an hour when this happened, this conversation about giving. Hour and a half later, we Deacon's Corner on the number 1, about half an hour away. My kids hadn't eaten lunch yet. It's almost 2 o'clock, so I was like, okay, we'll get A&W. And my kids are like, oh, we're super hungry. So they both got a kid's meal. I got me a meal. And of course, in that situation, they didn't eat anything. I pretty much ate their 2 kids' meals, and my full meal was untouched. They had some fries, and I don't think, a couple sips of their A&W root beer. That was it. So we got a to-go bag, and I was kind of grumbling and frustrated, like I could have saved money. So I think it was during a time I didn't have a whole lot of extra, so it's just like I could have saved $5 by one meal and one kid's meal. But as we got out the store, there's these 2 teens sitting there, and he said, "Hey, do you happen to have $2 a toonie, and so we can go and just grab something?" And I was like, "I'm sorry, I used my debit card here, and I was about to step away." And I was like, "Wait, are you hungry?" They're like, yeah, that's what we were just hoping to like grab a bar to share or something. I was like, well, I have this full meal right here. We didn't touch it. There's, over a meal's worth of fries too, but there's a burger. I think actually burger, onion rings, and fries. I think I got onion rings with my meal, and no one's touched this A&W. And they're like, really? Thanks. And they gave it to them. We walked to the car, and as soon as we kind of belted ourselves in, I sat down. The kids just, we gotta be generous, and they started cheering. And it's just like, we asked just on this ride if we could be generous, and God let us be generous. And it gets exciting. And this is not an abnormal thing. This is actually something, if you talk about people who are used to giving or just starting giving, they'll say, I asked and God gave someone. All of a sudden, boom. And it's almost immediate. When you're looking for a way to give and be generous, it comes. Um, so I really encourage you during this time, whether you're being generous with just talking to someone, reaching out from social isolation over a video chat, a phone call, video call, whatever. Your neighbor, someone that you can kind of just yell over the fence at, hey, do you need anything like that. Just check in with people. Ask God, who do I have to check in with, because I really want to be generous in this time, and great things will happen. And the last link there down below talks about how God used generosity, and it's pretty significant. When and this is not to toot my own horn, and maybe maybe it sounds like that. And God's like, there's your reward, because God talks about when you give generously on this earth, and you kind of do it in secret, and then God gives you heavenly rewards. If you give on this earth and you do it, big showboat, then you get earthly rewards and praise and whatever. But that's okay if I give up heavenly rewards as an example. But when the verse down there talks about when you give those two teams at A&W your burger and your drink, you're not just giving them to them. You gave it to me, and I was hungry and I was thirsty. And that's a powerful thing, because then he also ends up, if I would have just said no and walked away, then you told me no, and that's kind of a scary thought. It really kind of makes you like, oh man, I really should be generous more. And that doesn't mean that every time someone says, hey, I need something, you have to say, yes, here it is. Again, sound reasoning. If you just aren't able to, then you're not able to. But there is a challenge. Jesus spoke of it when the robber steals your tunic, give him your cloak as well. That's in Matthew. You can Google search that as well. That's a powerful thing that, you know what? If someone breaks into your house because they're trying to steal the toilet paper, you should probably give them some toilet paper and say, do you need any pasta? So it's like we can be smart, but at the same time, when it comes to generosity and following God, err on the side of God, not on the side of intelligence. God's ways look foolish in the eyes of man, but man's wisdom is foolishness in the eyes of God. I'd rather be God's fools than a wise man. So someone needs toilet paper, and they're like, I need toilet paper. I'll be like, I got Kleenex, I got napkins, I got bread. I forgot I got bread, so I actually have a lot of bread right now. I had to store some of my parents. How many loaves do you want? 5 loaves of bread, boom. And I might not give it all to one person, because I might be like, okay, smart. I'm going to give 1 loaf of bread to this person because that'll tide them through, and just be on the lookout. Maybe 2 loaves to this, that kind of thing. So that's how it's. I'm not going to. Don't say no. Say, okay, I'm going to give you, gold, silver I have not, but what I have I give to you. Paul and John, or Peter and John. And if someone's lame and you could pick them up and they walk, that's probably the best gift right now. So in that, just be smart, but give. When you're called to be generous, be generous. And you're like, well, I'm trying to use my sound logic. Sound logic is about living in fear, not about generosity. So in that time, make sure your sound logic for separating yourself, social isolation, doesn't become sound logic where, what if the pandemic lasts more than they said? I'm going to keep my rolls of toilet paper. That's not biblical at all. Isolating yourself, biblical. Hoarding toilet paper while other people are in need, that's not biblical. So yeah, thanks for watching. I ramble a lot. Looks like I'm right on. Well, I'm going to hit 30 minutes plus the 5 minutes of sound check. But I just hope that gave you something to think about. Again, don't live in fear. Be smart, but don't. Make sure you're still connected with people, with believers, and still grow during this time, and be generous. We're going to close in prayer, and then I'll send you off till next week. So thank you, dear Lord. Just thank you for allowing, letting us live in this time. Even 80 years ago, not everyone always had toilet paper, and now we can stock up for 6 months. We can communicate together. We have more face-to-face interaction with people 1,000 miles away than some people did 50 years ago with their the person across town. Um, we are able to connect in so many different ways, and we just thank you that you've given this to us. We do pray that we would just be able to hear your voice of discernment, dear God, when dealing with this, so we would not live in fear, but we'd still be smart, and that we'd be able to reach those, dear God, that you have lined up for us, because you tell us that it is not them who is being blessed when we bless others, it is us who's being blessed by you. And we just pray for that. Just pray that people who wish to would just have their eyes and their hearts open to bless others. And I just pray that when you talk about rewarding those blessings, that um, the joy of you would overflow them and they'd realize this is exactly what we needed. Just be with us in this next week, and we do pray again for wisdom and knowledge when combating this virus. Just for it to slow, we especially think those countries like Italy and Europe that are just devastated, dear God. We just pray that a revival can sweep through, and people are restored to health, dear God, but restored to you as well. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks for watching.